Hello everybody, I'm Chris Schmidt from Rocket Lasso, and I've got another tutorial for you today. This time we're going to be tackling vacuum forming. This is a question I get several times a year during Rocket Lasso Live, and Rocket Lasso Live is a live stream I do on Wednesdays where I take questions live from Twitch and from YouTube, so you can always go and check that out. I'll have a link below. But the question comes up a couple times a year about how to do vacuum forming, and we tackled it again this time, and it was working really nicely. I spent an additional couple of days refining it, and this tutorial is the end result of those techniques. Now, there are a decent amount of steps, so we're going to talk about the different steps of it a little bit more artistically, and these become things that you can mix and match, different sliders you can play around with, the different places that will have the biggest impact, because this is not going to be a do this step and then do this step and then do this step. There's a lot of like, okay, here's a problem, how do we solve it? Here's a problem, how do we solve it? So making it your own is going to be very important, but it's just exciting to get this out into the world and see what everybody does with it. So let's take a look at what our goal is going to be from a real world example. Here's a clip from Tested with Adam Savage where he is using a vacuum forming machine. And for the most part, this is what we're trying to achieve. So I'm just going to play on here, no audio. And that pulls down. You see it's a heated plastic element. We won't be worrying about this block, but turning on the suction and then letting the shape flatten out and create these wrinkles and take the overall form of the object. That is our goal. Now we'll be looking at that a little bit more step by step, a little bit more frame by frame as we go. And we've got some other references to take a look at as well. Before we jump into cinema though, I would like to mention that there's a brand new rocketlasso.com. You should head on over there to check out a very nice curated list of all the tutorials, very searchable. In fact, let me click on the tutorials page here. And we've got the categories and levels and versions and structures. You can include the live stream, search all of that. In addition, get the plugins, check out the blog to get different details of what is going on over here as far as plugin development and the site and the schedule. In addition to that, you can head over to the community page where you can join the Rocket Lasso Slack channel where there's a bunch of other helpful artists who are answering and asking questions. It's a really good place if you're trying to get feedback and just develop more as an artist. And then, of course, we got the contact forms. But go and check out the website if you haven't already. Jumping over to Cinema 4D R23, we can begin the process. Now, I don't think you actually need R23. As long as your version of Cinema has the volume builder and it has fields, then we should be ready to go. If there's any specific details, I'll call them out. I did prepare the scene file ahead of time just so that I don't have to talk through the aesthetics of it. I've got Redshift installed. I've got a bunch of Redshift materials already prepped. There are some lights in the scene, a camera with a Redshift tag. We might turn some of those on just to see it and make it look pretty, but this is not a tutorial about Redshift, so we will be focusing on the techniques for the vacuum forming. The first object that we need to deal with is the base plate. So I created a cube, renamed it base, and the size here is 1200 by 100 by 1200. If you're following along, you want to be very specific. Those are the numbers. Now, when we're actually doing the vacuum forming, I'd like the plastic sheet to pretty much be on the perfect ground level at 000. It just keeps everything nice and clean. I'd like to move this down. Looks like I already did. I'll put that to 0. Let's move this down a little bit. It's 100 tall, so if I set this to -50, then that is perfectly ground level. Everything would appear above. If I make a figure object, you see he's standing right on it. That is fine. I would actually like to move it a little bit more down, because if the plastic sheet's going to be exactly at 0, then I don't want it intersecting, so this can go an extra -5. So a lot of objects will go -5. Let's just keep that in mind. So that scoots down a little bit more. The next step, I believe, should be what model do we want to vacuum form? Let's get a sense of scale here. So jumping into the content browser, and I'll jump up a few so we're on default, you can enter into the presets, and if you've downloaded them, they should be available for free if you've purchased Cinema. Inside of presets, there is 3D Objects Volume 2. Inside of there is Sculpting Bases, and this is bases to begin your sculpting. And I'm going to start with a model that I think is actually super tricky. We're picking it because it's a difficult model, and that is the Stegosaurus. Specifically, if you're going to be doing vacuum forming, there are very specific rules in real life that you should follow. And all of these cavities and overhangs are just a really bad idea. And we've also got these sharp spikes. The reason we're using it is I want to show you that this technique should work even on a crazy object like this. The first thing is scooting this down to -5, so it's sitting on the base plate, and it's a little bit big. So T for scale, and start scaling down, hold down Shift, and if you're exactly on the scale I am, I'm going to go to 65%. Seems good. E for move, and I want to visually move it to the center of the plate. Doesn't have to be perfect, just so that the head and tail are about the same distance from the front and back. Now, I don't want this texture on the Stegosaurus, so that can be deleted and swapped out with this plastic redshift material, and I want the plastic sheet that's going to get dropped onto the dinosaur, creating a plane. This needs to be set to a scale of, let's say, 1300 by 1300. So you can see it is overshooting. There's a lip over the edge here. And subdividing the setting I will go with, I just hit NB so I can see our polygon count. The setting, the width I would like is, let's say, 44 by 44. A pretty good amount of subdivisions, but not a crazy high amount. So it should run relatively quickly for us. So if this is our sheet of plastic, I could drag our sheet of plastic material onto there. And in spite of using redshift, I should be able to turn on my materials and actually see the materials show up here in the viewport to get the different colors popping in. So if that's our sheet of plastic, it needs something to clamp onto. In fact, if we look at the reference footage, you see that there's this metallic frame that is holding the sheet of plastic. So let's just approximate that. Creating that is a simple thing of, let's say, making a rectangle spline, laying it down flat, setting this to probably, we'll do 1300 again. 1300 by 1300. So it should be perfectly outlining this shape. We do want it to overlap this plastic, so that could be fed into a sweep. Holding down Alt, it becomes a child. And then holding down Shift as the sweep is selected, I can create a rectangle, which automatically becomes a child. T for scale, and I can scale this down. You see we are making this nice rim there. I would like it to go pretty much right up to the edge of that line of subdivision we have. It's a kind of an arbitrary amount, but it's not super important. That is about 53. The height, I'd like to be more specific, so a height of 20 is a good eyeball. Any of these you can change. We're just trying to stay on the same page in these early steps. This sweep, I'll call it top because it will seal in the top. It is currently 20 thick, which means if we go up 10, it'll be laying on the ground. I'll go up to 12, so there's a little bit of a space in between. Then a duplicate of that. Actually, if you wanted to, you could make an instance of this. Why not? I don't think there's a reason not to. Make an instance of it, call that bottom, and that can go to -12. And the reason for making an instance is any changes that we make to, say, the top. We can grab this rectangle, add on some rounding. You see it gets applied to both of them. No reason not to add a little bit of rounding. I don't need all the subdivisions, so I'll change the angle to 25. So those get rounded out. And now we've got something that's holding the sheet of plastic in between. If you want to tighten that up, you can, but we will be giving that thickness, and that thickness will need to be accounted for. In fact, that sheet of plastic will be probably getting about 10 thick, if I am remembering correctly. So just to save ourselves time, let's scoot that up an extra 10 units, and this down an extra 10. So it'll be -20 and +20 on those. We'll see how that goes. We'll probably end up tweaking it a little bit more as well. So both of those are creating the top and bottom frame. I can hit save and create a brand new null so that these can get grouped. I want it to be at 0, 0, 0, which is why I made it from scratch. And let's rename this up/down. This is something we're going to be animating up and down. This is going to be the sheet of plastic. So what else needs to be in the sheet of plastic? Well, the actual sheet of plastic. So let's drag that in, call it plastic sheet. And this can be scooted up and down, and that is what is going to pass over our dinosaur. Now, if you want to, you could spend more time and add extra geometry on here. I could hide this, and let's even hide the base. And you can see I had spent time, and I put poles on here, so it could be traveling along those rails. I even put these holes punched through, so those would look like they're creating the vacuum to pull the air out. Those are just bonus details. They're purely aesthetic. I added a table on here and some materials. None of that, all that you could just make it look however you want. We are building the mechanical parts of this. So going back and turning those back on again. What's next? Well, this is the end point for this. It will pull down and end here. I would like the keyframes in the beginning to be linear keyframes, so it's not easing in and easing out everywhere. So hitting Control or Command on the Mac, D, It'll pop open project settings. Under key interpolation, change interpolation to linear. So it will be not easing in, easing out. It'll just go from one keyframe to the next one with no smooth transition. Let's say this sheet will be up at the end, but it's already at 0. So let's say it takes 45 frames to get down to this point. So at the time of 45, coordinate record the position of Y on our up and down. Then we can rewind, and at the beginning, we want it to be further up in the air. You can move this up to whatever amount you want. It could be really far up. It could be just barely above the mold that we're going to be creating. I'm just going to eyeball. If we want to be precise, I'll go to 900 units. That sounds good. I might end up tweaking that, but that's fine for now. At the time of 0, it is 900. So if I were to hit play, we'll get a linear transition from it being up to being down. Let's start kind of melting this plastic, emulating that melting plastic effect. And you can see that here in our reference footage. If I jump back, look at this melted plastic. So that is the goal. The goal here also is to not do any of this with dynamics, but to do it with deformers, so we have lots of control. The plastic sheet needs to get deformed. The way I like deforming things these days is creating a plane deformer and throwing that in, changing this to not be a effector, but instead be a deformer. So deformation point. It is now going to deform the points. You see they moved off to -z, and that is because under parameter it is set to, actually it's set to Y, but everything is relative to the node. So Z is always forward and backward in Cinema, and we're moving those points forward and backward. So this is the parameter we want, Z. So I'm not sure how far I want to go, so let's try -400. Might be a good number, might be too much. Okay, it's way too much. You see it's going to sag a lot. So we'll say 300, which still might be too much, but we'll work with that for now. So this is getting deformed to push down. I don't want to forget that this is a deformer, so I'll put the word deformer at the end, just to keep that clear in my head. And I want this to sag down, I want to push down, but not everywhere, so it needs a fall off. The fall off in this case can be probably a spherical or a box field. I will use a box field. It needs to exist in the same spot that the other one is, so that can be zeroed out. Click this Reset PSR button to zero out its position. It looks like the field is currently offset as well, so that can be zeroed out. And now you see it actually pushes up. That button got placed here in R23, I believe, which is very handy. Selecting the box field, I can hit T, scale it up, and now there's a fall off that will be controlling where this thing will droop down. It's pretty blunt right now. We can control it in a bunch of additional ways to try and help this. First of all, under remapping, very important, we could change the inner offset so we could get this point going, or we could round or smooth that out a little bit. A very nice setting is under contour, changing this to something like curve. And now we have a spline, which is the profile of one side. You can kind of imagine this flipped upside down, and that is creating these curves for us. So this could get smoothed out a little bit extra, or it could more sharply pull up. I actually kind of like it doing that sharply pulled up, and then it can more smoothly transition there. So that's just a little bit of extra curvature we could add that way, but a lot of the smoothing out of this is going to be via the next deformer we add, and that is a smoothing deformer. That is made a child after our plane deformer, and as soon as I drop it in, you can see it's going to smooth that out quite a bit. Clicking the smoothing deformer, there's a couple of key settings. First of all, stiffness. We put that down to 0 because it's just returning it to the original shape, so we don't want to return to the original shape at all. And then there's the number of iterations. How many times is it trying to smooth it again and again and again? And here's one of the first artistic decisions we can make. How smooth do we want this to look? So I could drag it up a bunch, and you can see it's going to get very smooth overall. But you want as few as you can get away with, because it is taking processing time to do all of these smoothing iterations. That is pretty dang smooth overall. I like that. I don't want the smoothing to apply to this outer part, though. The smoothing is applying everywhere. We might be able to get away with dragging in that box field, making a copy of it, but honestly, or dragging in the same one, but I'm just gonna make a copy. Holding down Control, I can drag a duplicate of the box field, a child of the smoothing deformer. That just helps us keep them clear. And inside of that, under fall off, drag in that new box field. which is going to say, hey, where can it be applied? Currently, there's a lot of fall off in this box field. I don't want any fall off. I want it to be full power anywhere I tell it to go. So under box field, under remapping, I'm going to say inner offset. I'm going to start pulling this up. And as I do, there is now no fall off. It's full power or none. This curve is doing nothing now, so that can be set to none. And now you can see that because I put this limitation on it, these corners, this is nice and straight, and then the curve begins where this box field is. So hitting T for scale, I could scale this up a little bit more and catch that next layer. And now you see right there on the edge, right where the lip is, and that's why I want to make sure the lip was pretty much lined up with that corner. Now that's where the transition begins, and we don't have to worry about it smoothing someplace we didn't want it to. And just to show it, if I turn this off, you can see that's not limiting it, and this is limiting it. And now we get this nice controllable droop. And what's nice about creating those is go back to the box field, and we could change the profile. We could pinch this in further. We could pull it out more. We could go into the actual plane deformer and push this number down further. Say, okay, let's go negative 500, and now it's going to droop even more. We could go a smaller number and not quite droop as much as we are currently. So a lot of different settings we can play around there. It gives us the basis of our plastic melt. Give this a save. Hitting play, we can let that plastic drop. Though something I'm noticing right away is we're getting a pretty significant drop in frames per second. We're getting down to like 25, 35 frames per second. And something that I have found that can cause this is these deformers are moving inside of something that's animated, and that movement could cause it to take longer to calculate. I think it's forcing them to refresh. So we could copy this name, plane deformer, so I can say box field and then paste in box deformer, so I know that's what that's controlling. Grab smoothing and then modify this name, paste it in. If we take both of these and pull them out of this up and down context, if I hit play now, then you can see that it's staying up at 140-ish the entire time as that moves down, and it's not having to do as much refreshing. So just an important detail. Along those lines, we have to make sure that this box field is large enough to actually be colliding with them. So selecting, let's do the plane and make sure that it's super tall. That's really tall. So actually I want to be even taller than that because I want this inner fall off to go with it. So we can make this like infinitely tall. So let's make a 5 in there, and you see it's taller than everything we're doing, so that's fine. Grab the smoothing one and let's just add a 2 on the front of that. It makes it super tall. And those don't need to change, so those should be able to just pass straight through and run quicker. It's just an interesting detail where those are getting triggered to refresh. As this pushes down, it's going to need to start to deform, hitting whatever we want it to. So let's do the first step, save it. And I don't want to just collide directly with this dinosaur. This dinosaur, its mesh could be all over the place, and it's really sharp. There's a lot of sharp angles. These are very thin, so there's things we need to do to modify before we can start colliding with it. Here's my thought. How about creating, so we can make this a rig that is really easy to adjust and swap out different models to vacuum form? We'll begin by creating a connect object. This connect object can store everything that's supposed to be collided with. So in this case, we've got our Stegosaurus base. Dropping that inside of there, renaming the connect to model. That will be this is the actual model of the creature. I would like to create a volume mesh from this. So creating a brand new volume builder and then holding on Alt as I create a volume mesher. This is something that we can feed objects to create a big blob of it. We could drag this as a child, but for a bunch of reasons, it's going to be better to drag it in as a remote link. So dragging model in from the top into its object list, we can now see a blob of the Stegosaurus hiding the original model. We'll double click the top stoplight. We can see the mesh that it's giving us. The lower poly we go here, the better it's going to be, the quicker everything will calculate, which is a good thing. So selecting the builder, I would like to keep on cranking up this voxel size, and the higher up we go, the bigger the voxels, the quicker everything calculates. I would like to get to around this point on the mesh, because that's very light on the polygons. But of course, at this low resolution, we're completely losing the plates. Even the legs are disappearing. The tail is gone. So we need to counteract that in different ways. We could create a SDF dilate from this menu, but I personally like creating them from the volume menu and making them an external object. It's a lot easier to manipulate and keyframe that way. So creating an STF smooth, dropping that as a child of the volume builder, it becomes inside the field list. Actually, I'm sorry, inside of the volume builder, you see that it's a parent of it. This is currently set to smooth mode, but that can be changed to dilate and erode, in which case I probably want to rename this to inflate. That's what's going to inflate our model. And grabbing this offset, I can keep on increasing it, and you'll see as we inflate the internal model, everything will start to appear again, and that is very nice. The plates that are inside of there, those are really thin. So before we get too far, I think I would like to, and I'll temporarily turn off our volume, unhide the model, and we'll be hiding and unhiding things a lot, so get used to that. Inside of Stegosaurus, we've got all these different parts that make it up. I don't think we need the tongue. I'll delete that. But we do have these spine bones, and those are the plates on its back. I would like to inflate those. So we've actually already got a plane deformer that's doing what we want it to. So holding Control, I'll duplicate that into the spine bones, and it's going to super explode those out. I don't want any fall off, so under fall off, delete the box field, and under parameter, currently it's going -300. Let's try saying 5. So as we increase and decrease this, we can inflate or deflate the plates on his back as much or as little as we need to, so that the volume builder can see them better. And like I said, we're putting a pretty rough model in here, so I'm not going to be shy about inflating those a little bit to help us out. So we've now modified this in the model, but that means turning back on our builder, then that should all turn on. This is intentionally very chunky, very low poly, because it's just going to make everything easier to collide with it. If we wanted to, we can make it a little bit even easier on it, doing things like creating another smoothing deformer. Make that a child of the volume mesher, because we want to modify the mesh, and that will smooth out the overall shape of it. But of course, that's going to begin to shrink it on the edges as well. So you could smooth out the mesh a bit, but that might round these parts out. So, take it or leave it. Temporarily, I shall turn it off. Another thing I'm seeing is we've got this big void inside of it. And to tell you the truth, I think I would like to fill that in. Maybe we will fill it in, but we'll do it after we see why it's a problem. So we've got a modified Stegosaurus mesh, and that's in this volume mesher. I'm going to rename that model collider. That is what we will collide with. Save the scene file, and the next step will be making this collide somehow. That will be done by modifying the plastic sheet with a collision deformer. I did not use this often enough. We've had it for a while, and it's actually really powerful, and it's pretty quick, and in this type of use case, this is amazing. Dragging this after our other deformers, remember this calculates first, second, third, this is going to enable us to collide with different objects. What object do we want to collide with? Well, under colliders, I want to collide with the model collider of the Stegosaurus. So that's what we collide with. Hitting play, let's see what happens just out of the box. This is going to push down. Let's look at it from the top. And look, immediately it is colliding. It is interacting with it. It does, though, pop through. It is popping right through the top of it and then sinking through the ground. So obviously we need some additional tweaks. One thing you do right out of the gate to keep this simple is grabbing restore shape and zeroing that out. With 0 restore shape, it's not trying to return to its original position. So once this pushes up, it actually remembers it and mostly doesn't get pulled through. It's a lot better than when it was off. Combining this, though, there's an additional problem, and that is it's drooping down so much that it's really having to fight that. So that's really close to working, but the collision is really having to fight this plane deformer. So this is the first place for us to add some additional keyframes. As I scroll back and reset, at what point does this begin to intersect with our dinosaur? And I'd say right around here. So at frame, we can even go back, well, yeah, let's do frame 11. We can even go a few extra forward. So at frame 13, it just happens to be where it collides. Grabbing the plane deformer and recording the Z position. And by keyframing that, as we go forward and we actually collide with the ground, What if we say, you know what, once it gets to the ground, this could be completely flat. So at frame 45, this could be at 0. So now it's dealing with a flat sheet instead of it drooping down. And it's going to stop drooping down because it's now pushing against our dinosaur. Keyframing that, let's rewind and see what our end result is. And view it from the top. And already that's working way better. You see that that is now maintaining the shape a lot. It does pass through these spikes, and that's why I'm saying these spikes can be kind of rough. There are pretty much two things we can do to start to improve that. One is we could inflate this dinosaur collider more, the model collider. We could increase the poly count of our plastic sheet. Let's just try that. Let's put this up to 66 and 66. A little bit more resolution and hit play. And you see that it is attempting to take on its shape a little bit more, so that's nice. But honestly, I don't want to slow ourselves down by creating more and more polygons. Everything slows down as we increase that count. So the other thing we could do is smooth out this model more and do things like make it not dip down quite as much. So how about making a quick bit of extra model on here? Just a cube, scoot it into the back middle of the spines, T for scale, and move it into, maybe sync it a little bit. C to make it editable, the letter C. Go to polygon mode, and this can extrude. D, pull that out, scoot it down. And I'm going to be really rough with this. T for scale, pinch that down maybe a little bit. Select this one. T, or D for extrude. Pull out, pull down. T for scale, scale that down. And that is just a little something to fill in these gaps a bit. We could get fancier with it if we wanted to, but I think that works pretty well. Now we've got this nice model and it's in here. We might have additional modifications in the future or in different models. So what I'm inclined to do is duplicate this connect object, and this will be model, let's just say model extra. So those are extra pieces of the model. Delete the Stegosaurus base and drag this box in the back. And now we've got something in this second connector. And the reason we're using connector is because in the volume builder, I can just drag in the model extra. And now it's seeing everything that is inside of that connector. And immediately you can see that it has flattened out the back of the overall dinosaur. If we were to turn back on this smoothing, then I think it's going to do a pretty good job of rounding that out. But yeah, once again, it's pulling everything in, and I don't want to do that any more than we have to. So with this back filled in a little bit more, let's see how our collider deals with it. And because of the way we're building the hierarchy, we don't have to update anything else. We just change what it collides with. So pull this down, and you can see, and let's hide the original models, and maybe even hide the collider. You can see that it's doing a better job of filling in the gap there, but it does still pass through a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, that seems like a bit of a problem, but actually it's not. We do not need to worry about it missing some parts of that. We're going to get that in a different way. We just need this to feed us the overall shape. So hitting play and letting this run through, we can see that we get this nice shape overall, but as it continues running, it's kind of tugging everything a bit. Everything's getting pulled more towards the center, and eventually it escapes out from the edges. There are a couple of settings we can probably tweak on this collider to make it run a little bit smoother for us. So save this scene file as another version, and let's play with some settings. There are actually quite a few settings inside of our collision deformer. Going to advanced, we can see these are the defaults, but a couple things we can tweak, and let's just have it be playing through and see what starts to improve the situation. Honestly, I'm not an expert in the collision deformer, so you might even have a better intuition of this than I do. One thing we do is increase the number of steps. Just by setting that up to 2, we're doubling the number of steps, which means it should be trying to be twice as accurate. We could crank that up to like 20, and then there's going to be a lot of calculations. You see it starts slowing us down a little. Actually, it starts slowing down quite a bit, so I don't think we need quite as many steps, but it is passing through less. So maybe 2 is a nice little addition. And then we've got the size, and I think it's kind of like it's how far away is it going to push from these colliders. So that could probably be increased a little bit. And immediately you see that that's doing a better job of staying on the top. Not perfect, but better. We have an overall stiffness here. I believe that can probably be dropped way down. And it's going to be more free to take on the general shape of it. And I really love this kind of draping of the plastic. I think that's what we're looking for. And, you know, things like relax, that could get increased to, let's just try cranking up the big number. Let's do 22 and see what effect that might have. I'm not seeing too much of a visual difference. It seems to do a little bit more in the way of wrinkles on the corners. But let's reset it back to the original and take a look if there's a difference. Yeah, that was changing the wrinkles that happened in the corners. Could be something you want to deal with. Maybe, maybe not. Based on us pulling down the stiffness and changing these other settings, you can see that these edges are no longer fighting us anymore. Those are actually doing a really nice job of just being calm and not shooting out. If they are actually, I mean, in my original practice run, those were more of a problem. We happened to get some pretty nice settings there. So we could just say, okay, good enough, let's move on. And I'm inclined to do that, but maybe yours are not cooperating that much and we don't want these edges to escape. So how would you stop those from escaping? Well, we want to probably make a vertex map and make a fall off on those corners. So to make a vertex map, we will have to make our plastic sheet editable. Going back to the time of 0, make it editable, and then go to point mode, select any point, select set vertex weight, and this can be set to whatever because it will be controlled by using fields. Turn off the freeze. And how do I want to control it? Well, we've already got this box field smoothing, and I think it's got the exact fall off that we want. You see that this is saying, yes, you can have a complete effect here, but not there. And let's just see if that is the one that we want. Deselect the vertex tag, so it's not the vertex map tag, to make sure that's not blowing out our eyeballs with the bright red and yellow. All right. If in the collision, there is a maps category and we have stretch and relax. And by feeding this in here, I think it's going to either be correct. That should, in theory, fix it. Actually, I want to make it more blatant. Let's intentionally break it. So under advanced, let's put the relax back up really strong. And let's see if that does anything. Yeah, actually, it calmed those down a lot, but it might be backwards from what we want. It's hard to tell. So under this vertex map, I could say, actually, I want a modifier layer that inverts the end result. And let's see what the opposite does. And now you can see that this is having no, essentially it's having no effect here. So the opposite is breaking. So I think it was correct the first time. We could get rid of this invert, and now it's not going to have any effect on those corner edges, and that is what we want. Now, in theory, this box field is constantly refreshing again and again and again. We don't need it to refresh. We've already got the info we want, so deleting that box field will just set that as a vertex map, and it's just permanently there and not having to refresh and calculate all the time. So that is only if you needed to fix it, but now that should be fixed one way or the other. So now we have a sheet of plastic pushing down, hitting the general shape of the Stegosaurus. It is now taking on that shape as it also deforms upward. And then it settles down here right on ground level, right at 0. And actually, I'm quite pleased with the way all of that is working. So good time to hit save. Here's the next thing I'd like to fix, though. If we hit play a little bit more, you see after it settles down, the plastic starts kind of stretching back up again. And I don't want this to keep stretching up. If anything, I'd kind of want that sagging down. I mean, perhaps depending on the way the plastic is melting and cooling, if there's air trapped, maybe it pushes up. But personally, I would like that to keep maybe sagging down a little bit more. But of course, no effects that we're doing here, no deformers can accept a wind or anything. So what we might do in this circumstance is, once again, keyframe our plane deformer. Currently, it is flattening itself out all the way up to 45. And once it stops flattening itself out, everything starts pushing up. But how about in the time that comes after this, we allow this to start pushing down? Now, we might end up retiming all of this stuff later, but arbitrarily, I'll go all the way to 90, the end of our current timeline, and now push this down. We're going to animate this back down again. And you'll see as I drag this down, it is now pulling the overall shape down as well. That's going to be popping because we're not letting it properly refresh. But let's just say it goes back down to the original 300 we had. And now that we are once again pushing this down, hit play and see what we get. Now, okay, you can see it's changing a little bit, but it's not reinflating upward. If we wanted to, we can select that one keyframe and say, let's try 500. And let's just take a look at the curvature that we get. That's the only thing I'm caring about right now. So that is sagging, and it continues sagging even more. And that's actually pretty smooth. Now, obviously, we're seeing it melt in these corners a bunch, and that might not be something we want to happen. It could be fine, but you'll see later on why that might be fine. If we do want to stop that, though, we need to collide with something else. And we have our base plate that is living right below it. So the collider could also be told that it's colliding with our base cube. Dragging that in, we have to run the simulation again. Let's see, and now it should hit that cube, and that stops. And even though we're pulling down, we're deforming and pulling down, you can see that it is not able to pass through the ground. You will see, though, that as it's trying to pull down, it is colliding, and it is now causing a bunch of wrinkles to happen. Depending on stylistically what you want to have happen, these wrinkles could be a good thing. Actually, if they weren't exploding on the edges, I'd be really pleased with that. I think that this is a little bit of a push and pull on our plane deformer. We have to find a nice happy medium number. There's other ways we could have this fall off. Actually, I have noticed that the fall off, if you use the collision, it does have a fall off here, but this fall off does not cooperate very much. Let's try dragging in the plane fall off, which was the original one that caused a sag. And let's just see what happens if we run that. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll work really well. But yeah, you see everything's breaking, where like these wrinkles look really weird, but look, it's passing right through the ground. Like, why is that going through the ground? Well, something about the fall off just makes it behave oddly, so that doesn't seem like too much of an option to me. So that is going to start, it's going to keep pushing down, and eventually it's going to start wrinkling up. There could be settings. We could spend a lot of time playing here. The stretch could be a big variable on that. We could say that we want almost no stretch, and let's see if it wrinkles more. If there's no stretching, I would think that this would want to wrinkle even quicker, but it could be the opposite. I'm not sure. The wrinkles look better. And now let's try going up really high, like 33, and see if that has any problem. Those explode. Okay, those are exploding extra, so it seems like lower is better. There's also flex. That's the ability for it to... that might cause it to bunch up. I don't know. I'm just playing around with these settings. So let's try lowering that as well and see what we get. Okay, those wrinkles push out from the center. Just by lowering the flex, those wrinkles push out from the center point. And once we start doing more suction on this, I actually kind of like that. So I will stop there, but this is a good place that you can just play around the settings, see what you end up getting here. But pretty clean overall. I like that. Hit a quick save. What is our next step? Oh, let's see. Those are all pulling down. The next step is going to be the idea of flipping on the switch to turn on the vacuum former. Going back to this tested video, you can see that the buck, he turns it on, and now he's going to pull down the machinery, so the plastic is overlaying it. And there's a heating element up there which melted the plastic. It covers the overall shape. Now he's trying to put this frame around it to make it conform to the shape a little bit more. But right here, you see he reaches down and he flips this switch, and that switch is what actually turns on the air, and the suction starts pulling it down. So it's kind of like plastic comes down, then the suction starts. So having done that, let's figure out how we want the suction to happen. So that would be a couple different things we could do, but the simplest would be, because of this nice clean shape that we're getting, would be another plane deformer. So here's my thought. What if we just make a copy of this plane deformer? I don't need the fall off anymore, so delete that one. And right now it's really strong, and it's probably a keyframe. So let's kill the keyframe. If you hold down Control and Shift as you click this keyframe, it'll delete all the keyframes and the entire track off of it. And this can be set to whatever you want. So this is going to deform, but it's going to deform after these other deformers. It's at the bottom of that list. So increasing it will essentially give us an inflation effect. It's inflating it. But pulling it down negative will start at the original place, and it'll begin making it kind of look like everything is sucking inward and all the air is getting pulled out. It can only go so far until it starts looking like it's breaking, but a little bit, I think, could go a long way there. So let's just default that to 0, hit play, and see where we're at and when we want this to happen. So that settles in, and it's kind of just sagging downward, and then there's a sudden point that we want the suction to begin. So for my money, let's go to frame 70. That seems good. So at frame 70, this has been fine, and all the action will begin at 70. So turning on, well, creating a keyframe on Z here. We can fast forward to, when do we want the suction to end? Probably a little bit after that 90. So I'll double our current keyframes up to 180. And R23, this automatically jumps our timeline up to, oh, I'm sorry if I change this number. Change that up to 180, it automatically jumps the timeline longer, so that is now taking up the entire space. Selecting the plane deformer. It's starting at 70, and I want it to end at, I don't know, kind of arbitrarily, let's say 110. Nice clean number. And how far in do we want that to go? I'm going to drag it until it essentially breaks. And I'd say right around there is as far as I can go until it starts looking like it's breaking. Let's let that play through in real time. Well, almost real time. We're getting about half the frame rate, but it's going down, and then the suction begins. And honestly, it was pretty subtle. It was slow. So I want this to go quicker. Maybe we will end at 90. So that deformation can happen quicker. So we're here, and then the suction begins and everything pulls down. So it's subtle, but it's starting to pull that in a little bit. What's the next thing? Well, I want the plastic to look like it's just melting away and all of the air is getting sucked out from the bottom. So how about we keyframe this to move down again? It's going to move down and away a second time. I don't want these handles, these nice handles that we made. I don't want those moving away. And I should have applied a nice metallic material on those. I don't want those moving away. So how about we put a separate keyframe on our plastic sheet? I actually don't like keyframing those things directly. So put it into a null, holding down Alt-G. I can put that into a null. And this will be up, down, 2. And this is just holding the plastic sheet for us. It's already zeroed out, so that should be fine. Rewind to hit play. Oh, actually, yeah, that's fine. I should be able to play, and nothing should have changed. And that's working fine. So we now know at the time of 70 is the beginning of the motion. We're supposed to be sucking the air out from this. So at the time of 70, let's record up, down, 2 on Y. And then currently we're ending on frame 90 for that. So at frame 90, let's just pull this whole thing down. Now it's going to look, you see it's getting a little scratchy there. It's going like, it doesn't know what to do. That's happening for a bunch of reasons, and we'll deal with that in a second. Currently, let's just keyframe this down like minus 200. Kind of an arbitrary number. It's something we can come back and tweak later. Why is this kind of getting all scratchy? Well, it's getting all scratchy because we are telling it to keep going down, but there's a floor there. It doesn't want to go through the floor. So I do want it to sink through the floor at this point. So at frame 70, I'll turn the floor off. So here's our base. That can get keyframed. So at frame 70, it exists. It's on. I'll keyframe enabled. 1 frame later, go 1 frame, or you hit the letter G to go 1 frame forward. Let's turn off the enabled and then turn that on. And now there is nothing for that to collide with. This can just get pulled straight down. So having done that, let's see how this works. Now the dinosaur is still there and that can still be collided with, but let's see how this works. So it's there, and then this is getting pulled down, and the suction should be happening, and the entire thing's getting pulled down. Now, it didn't entirely disappear, so we might need to keyframe it down further, but it is currently continuing to collide with this dinosaur. So we need the dinosaur to disappear as well. We've got our inflate happening. So at the time of 70, yeah, it should be the full dinosaur. It's been fully inflated, so that can be keyframed. But at the time of 90, I want it to have changed. So at the time of 90, how is this dinosaur changed? Well, I want it to be completely gone for all purposes. So let's just keep pulling this down. And as I do, you see it's going to deflate it and just sort of disappear. And at a certain point, it's just going to be gone. So at negative 45, it just has ceased to exist. So with any luck, because that is what is getting collided with, the dinosaur should cease to be there, and the plastic can just go straight down through it. And slowly over time as well. So let's see how that works. So it starts getting pulled down. The dinosaur shrinks. It's still holding on to it, but it keeps getting pulled down. It looks like it didn't go quite far enough, so I could select that keyframe, and arbitrarily, let's try going minus 55. And it's still there a little bit. Minus 65, and that seems to now be gone. Let's see how that behaves now. And you see how easy it is to change these keyframes afterwards. So it's just throw a number out there, see if it works. So it shrinks, it gets pulled down, and now it is hopefully, yeah, it seems to be far enough down that it's not going to bother us. I just want it to pass down through the floor. And let's take a look at it again. It's kind of popping in and out of existence a little bit there, and I'm entirely attributing that to our dinosaur disappearing. So let's take a look at that. We'll spend a little bit of time focusing on that. Hopefully not too much. You can see how it's shrinking away. It's really getting a little bit jittery on that as the dinosaur melts away. That could be okay. We could keyframe this entire thing down. We could start erasing it out. And we could also add in a smoothing. I don't like adding the smoothing because it really slows things down. But that could start... I mean, it's currently going away. It might just need to go away faster. Actually, that might be what I do. What if we just let go away really quickly? I'm going to drag the keyframe back. So that is now at frame 75. So just over the course of 5 frames, it is going to shrink, 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 and pretty much be gone. So if we do that... Oh, turn the plastic on. If we do that... Maybe it disappears so quickly that this can just be like, okay, it gets sucked through the ground. And phew, disappears and it gets pulled down. It gets really jittery right there. I'm curious what... It's currently colliding with just the model. And the base is turned off and the model is shrunk to nothing. So it must just be the collision deformer doing its thing as it gets pulled down. I don't want any of that to be visible kind of above the plate. So let's just see what that ends up with. Yeah, it's actually quite jittery. I'm not sure what's causing that. So I'll do a quick save right here, investigate that. And for you watching, you'll get the instant answer. So that's next version, and I investigate. Okay, after a little investigating, I cannot figure out why it's happening, but we're getting the twitching. Well, we're getting the twitching here. Everything turns off, it goes down, blah, 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 blah. It's happening because of the plane deformer, and that is not logical to me. I don't know why that would be the case, but if I turn that plane deformer, which should just be a post effect and everything, it's causing that oscillation, and with it off, it's now calmed down. I'm not sure why, but it's not a super vital part, so let's just leave that turned off for a little while and keep moving forward. And if we need to, we might be able to do a different effect, if need be. So, and we are getting those nice wrinkles. So that pulls down and it ends up here. I'd feel better if it was a little bit more below the ground. So 2 things we might do. One would be possibly restoring the shape at a certain point. So this is going, let's see, what is something we're keyframed? This is moving down. So at 90, as this transitions down, I guess we could start on 70. We could say, okay, start restoring the shape. So I play and we have to let it play through to be able to see the deformation. But at 70, let's just try this. The collision could be at restore shape 0. And then once we get up to 90, it can be up at 100. And that is going to actually sink it all the way down. But honestly, that's not a problem. Let's see how that looks. And it disappears. And then phew, everything gets pulled down very, very fast. It could be okay. Let's just try lowering the strength down. That was so strong. I'll drop it to 20%. See how that looks. As I said, this is going to be like a very artistic process. Like try adding something, try removing something else. Yeah, that calms down a little bit. Honestly, we don't need much. Let's just say 10%. And I think that is enough to have that shape really pull down. It'll go down below the ground. We could keyframe the entire down lower, but I don't think we need to. That looks like it's working pretty all right. Now, that is a sheet of plastic going down and suddenly sinks through the ground. So you're probably thinking, wait, like this sheet of plastic disappears from here and like where's our final mesh? Well, here's where things get interesting and definitely justified in saving a new file because we're going to make a second volume builder. So I'll do it from scratch. A new volume builder. Hold down Alt, create a new volume mesher. And what is this going to be fed? I'll move it down below. And this one will be our final plastic. Yes, the final plastic is going to be fed into this. The main thing is we need the plastic sheet. So under the volume builder, we can feed the plastic sheet. What's interesting, let's hide the up and down. And we're going to be doing that really often. We're going to be going to this and hiding, unhiding, hiding, and hiding. So here's a new feature or a feature in the newer cinemas is I can say, hey, I want to change the icon color to custom. And I'm going to do a very bright yellow because there are no icons that are really bright yellow. So that should just stand out to me. I know that that's something I'll be changing often. That's hidden. So now we just have a final plastic. I want that to be our blue color as well. So if I were to hit play, it's like, well, where's our sheet of plastic? I fed the plastic in there. Well, this is a volume builder, and it's set to a default of 10 for the voxel size. We might need to change this in different ways, but a plastic sheet is infinitely thin, and this can only show a voxel if it's at least that thick. So we need another one of those. STF smooths, make that a child. And this is coming above it. And I don't want this to be a smooth. I, again, want it to be a dilate. And if we dilate that up 5, that means it's getting thicker, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom, which is now a minimum of 10. An infinitely thin sheet could suddenly have a thickness of 10 because we fed this in. Now, the sheet can be no thinner than the voxel size. So if we want to make this half as thick, and here you can see the sheet, if you want that to be half as thick, you need to double, well, you have to take your voxel size and cut it in half. But of course, now it's going to be creating 4 times as many polygons, which is probably not something you want to do. It's going to be a lot of calculation time. So this is a good start for that. So here what we're looking at is just this sheet, the melted sheet, getting turned into a little bit of thickness. It does look a bit lumpy here. That's just something we get from the polygons. That is solved very easily with a smoothing deformer. That's the way I like to do it. Create another smoothing deformer, becomes a child of the final plastic. And now, immediately at those settings, you see that gets smoothed out. It doesn't even need that many iterations. Let's go as low as we can and just keep on increasing it until we can't see. Yeah, 8 seems all right. That seems pretty smooth. We might need to go more, but that's fine right now. It's not going to run quickly, but we should be able to hit play. Actually, it's not bad right now. You see the entire plastic sheet gets pulled down, and it will begin to melt away. And then, at a certain point, it's just going to be pulled below the ground, which is what we told it to do. So it just gets pulled below the ground. How? Okay, we want to have a sheet of plastic there all the time. Well, that's pretty straightforward. If we were to make let's just duplicate this plastic sheet and delete everything about it. If this plastic sheet lives at exactly 0, remember we said ground is 0, here's a plastic sheet that always lives on the ground. So if that gets fed, and I think I'll just hide it. If this gets fed into our volume builder, plastic sheet, let's say plastic sheet ground level, there should now be a second sheet of plastic in the volume builder. Let's make sure that this is below the inflate. And good idea to rename this inflate. Now there are 2 sheets. So as one of them sinks down, it'll be sinking through an existing one. Now our volume measure is going to be taking longer to calculate because we got 2, but now there's a sheet of plastic down there. And as this melts through, it will merge with this other one. They're just blobbing into each other. So as the secondary one, I'm going to change our view mode as our main sheet melts down. Look at that plastic, looks so good. Now as it melts down, look at that. It looks like it's just melting into a single sheet of plastic. That's working really well. We got more steps to do for sure, but those are melting together. What is the next thing we need to deal with? Well, we are completely losing our dinosaur shape. It is just going away. And not only that, as this sheet gets pulled through, our original blobby dinosaur, it's giving us way too much detail. We don't need all of that. So what we need to do is, in this volume builder, feed the original model. Remember, we've got this connect object storing the model. That comes in above the inflate. We don't want to inflate this one. Drag that in, and with any luck, as soon as that comes in, let's see. Well, if I rewind, we should be able to see it. Actually, it's probably completely consumed right now by this model collider. So let's hide that one. And there it is. Look, there is our little dinosaur hanging out inside of it. We need to make this look better. So inside of Volume Builder, create a folder. The model goes inside that folder. And we need another inflate, probably. So make another one. This will be inflate model, because it probably won't always be a dinosaur. And this one, this inflate model, will go inside the model folder. And this can be set to whatever we want. Immediately, you see it gave it a lot more form. If we take a look at our original model, what we really want is, not model extra, but model. What we really want is this to completely consume the original. So that's the tricky part, is we need to inflate this model or add enough detail so that it never quite escapes from there. And if we go too big, we're going to lose a lot of the detail. There's a big push and pull here about the resolution that you're making this. If we take our model and say, hey, let's double the voxel size, or double the voxels, or 4 times the voxels by having voxel size, then suddenly our resolution, it'll increase a lot. And you see this has now filled out the form a lot better. It's a lot more detailed, but the mesh density has gone way up. And just to show you, if I were to turn off that the model, let's see how long this takes to calculate. So if I play, I mean, honestly, not terrible. So let's maybe continue with it being 5. Make this dinosaur, here's the inflate. Let's see how it's running now. Hit play. You know what? It's doable. We can work from here. I imagine we're going to keep slowing down, but let's work from this. The inflate model, let's keep on decreasing this until, actually that's pretty good. It's deflated as much as we can be, and just a little bit of the pink is poking out from there. So if you wanted to fully inflate, you can inflate it a little bit more. I think that's pretty good for me. This could be the end point for the model. It ends up looking like this. Potentially, I mean, you could lower it and it's going to sharpen it all up. And if we eventually hide the model at the proper time, what do we got here? Yeah, you can see that this is sharper. So we'll have those options to sharpen it up a little bit more. But having said that, this inflating it up a couple of units, making that just a little bit more round. Now you can see that we see the model of the dinosaur inside. So what is the end result? Well, we haven't begun to erase everything out yet, but let's just pretend reviewing this from the top. If we go to a top-ish view, and let's say it's kind of blocking the view of everything coming below. Let's hit play and see what we end up with. We got a sheet of melted plastic that once it begins colliding with the model, it's going to start making a rough outline of it. So, okay, rough outline of that model. But keep in mind that inside of that rough outline of the model, we have a super detailed version of the model. So hitting play, this can keep on being like, okay, it's kind of like hitting the spikes. There's no air, so it's very loosely draping. It's draping on the head. It's draping on the tail. That all makes perfect sense. And as we start to get towards, so that the plastic should keep on melting down on the sides, working very nicely. Once we get to frame 70, that's when our big top layer of plastic begins getting yanked down. So right now, those begin getting yanked down, and as it gets yanked down, look at that. It is now revealing the existing dinosaur underneath it. So now, if we kind of viewed it from that top view, this is now working. This is giving us the mold that we wanted. We're going to have to deal with erasing all of that stuff out from beneath for when we don't want it. But before you get there, we need to put some add-ons, some extras onto our model to make this look a little bit more like something that got vacuum formed. So with all this working so well, definitely time to save another version. The details I'm talking about is if you're draping a sheet of plastic over a model, there couldn't be any holes in it. We are asking a lot. If you were like, oh, maybe it can form these shapes on the back of the Stegosaurus, like form these plates. Obviously, I don't think vacuum forming could do that, but you could, stretch your imagination and maybe it could do that. But it couldn't form these holes between the legs. And for the most part, I would imagine that there'd be like an arc going from his chin to the legs and from the tail to the legs. The shapes you feed into a vacuum form are very specific, and definitely we need to fill in the gaps between these legs. So hide the volume builder. Let's look at the original model and create some quick modifications here. Hopefully this won't take too long. I want to hide the camera as well. Don't need that eating up viewport space. All right. From the top view, we'll start with, let's do all three. Yeah, we'll just do all of them at the same time. From the top view, creating a new spline from the spline pen tool. I'll begin with this back leg, and I guess it would have come in from this direction. And I hold down Shift to break the tangent, and I want to arc in with sort of a C shape. So then it can go to the front leg, and I can pull it out, and you see I get the C shape. And then hold down Shift and break my tangent there, and I want to go up to the head. So up to the head, drag that out, hold down Shift to break the tangent, drag it back to about the same, not exactly on it so I can grab it easily, and then do the same thing. Click on the leg, pull out sort of a C shape. It doesn't need to be perfect. Hold down Shift, break the tangent, arc this in, go to this leg, pull it out. That can go as sharp as we want to. Probably shouldn't go past the halfway point. That's where they should meet, and we'll tweak them afterward. Pull this back again, and then arcing out to the tail. Let's do that. Break the tangent. And this gets a little bit weird. We can connect there. Actually, I pre-broke the tangent, so that worked all right. So now we've got the correct points. I want to clean up tangents. We can do that with Edit Tangent mode. Turning that on. I think I can just select one and then grab a handle, and you see I can freely move that. So this can arc down sharply. Select this one. I don't want them to pass through each other, but that's working pretty well. Depending on how you're viewing the model, you would only need to worry about the half you're seeing, but let's assume you're doing like a 360 rotation on this. So that can pinch way in. As long as these don't pass by each other, I think that's fine. Excellent. Turn off edit tangent mode. If we are inclined, these could probably be pulled out to the corners of the legs. But that gives us that general shape, which I'm quite pleased with. So that is, it's sort of a soft silhouette of the dinosaur. This needs to be turned into real geometry. So the best way to do that is with a loft. So holding an Alt, create the loft, is now fed this spline, creating a duplicate of that spline, selecting all the points. I'll just pull them up into the air. And it seems like the legs end right about there. The tail ends right about here. Actually, those are all working well. I will just select this back point. I'm just hitting spacebar to go to my select tool, eyeballing where I know the point is, then grow my point selection, U, Y, grow it once, and then pull that up into the air. These hold down control to deselect that back one, pull these up into the air. And if I do that well, actually T for scale, I can probably just scale those in. And this becomes some webbing inside of the dinosaur. What I would really love is to get a bit of an arc going on some of these. So that can be done by creating another copy of the spine. I'll grab the bottom one, duplicate again, select all, E for move it up into the air. And if I select this back point, I can pull it in, and you get that arc going. And under the chin, get this arc going. I'd like it to go pretty far back. And now selecting the bottom one, this front point, that can go to whatever point we think would be good for the webbing. The back one, the same. I like that C shape. I don't want to, I want the plastic to deform, let's say up to there. And I'll just keep on manipulating these different points on the different layers until I get a curve I like. This back tail could probably get pulled down and back a little bit. Keep in mind I hit R for rotate and also spin this up or down to make it go. Doesn't need to be perfect, and you'll have to do this differently for each model depending on how specific you're getting. Fix this front of the head as well. R for rotate, spin it up. And that's working well. NB, and you can see the different mesh we've got. The loft needs additional segments along the mesh subdivision U. So as I increase this, you see it's going to round that out a little bit more. Doesn't need to be crazy because the volume builder will smooth it out as well. But now we've got this arc. This needs to be fed into the volume builder. So this can be named webbing. That will be the webbing of the model. And we're already doing a good job with these builders, so I'll make another copy here. And this will be, we could make separate ones. It could be a good idea to do separate, so we'll do them separate. I'll say webbing. This can contain all the webbing that will get fed in. So we'll add that in and reactivate our final plastic. So there's that plastic. And this needs to also be fed in the volume builder. The webbing. So drag the webbing connect object here above the model, and instantly there is webbing. The plastic is no longer forming a hole through our model, and that is exactly what we wanted. So that is webbing. Hit save. What I'd like to do now is add in some wrinkles as well. These are artistic additions you can do. You don't have to, but imperfections go a long way. And I'd like to show you here. You can see some wrinkles here in the Adam Savage video, but also I like this one as well. And I'll frame by frame this. Here's somebody else doing a little bit of vacuum forming. And you can see the heating element. You could spend time and model out this entire thing, get this nice warm light above it. All of that could be really nice. But as he pulls this down, he's vacuum forming a camera. And you can see that the camera ends up losing a lot of detail. It is soft. Look at the lack of detail. There's really soft curves around everything. But definitely where the plastic is meeting this object, you can see that we are, first of all, it's very soft, but then we get wrinkles. The wrinkles are largely showing up in the corners, very harsh wrinkles, but there's also random ones out here in the rest of the plastic, and you get smaller ones going from these other places as well. And this is the final plastic that he ends up with. So I think adding in these types of imperfections goes a really long way to making this look even better. There are maybe 3 different types of wrinkles we can add, and it's just modifications of the same idea. The first one, pretty straightforward. Turn off our volume builder. I would like to just start drawing out some lines that are going to fade out from the dinosaur. So back to spline pen tool, And we want the connection points of where it is touching. So like maybe the back of the heel, that seems like a place that an arc might be. And I kind of like there to be a little bit of a curve here. Escape, and we can continue on the same spline. Let's do one from the back of the other heel. It can be a different arc a little bit. Maybe a second one here, off in a slightly different direction. This one, maybe another one right there. Up to the front, pull one out, and once again, curve. You can curve in like that. One on the front, maybe, I mean, and you know, artistically speaking, you do whatever you want here. Maybe a little bit of an S curve into that one. And just one escape. One here as well. Yeah, I like that. So those are some wrinkles to come out from the dinosaur. Honestly, I would kind of like another one coming from the webbing back here, or maybe even two. So I don't know exactly where the webbing begins or ends, so I'll just guess right there. And another one like that. And maybe one from the front of the neck. I don't know where that is again, but that should be fine. So let's take a look. And if we show the webbing, then actually it's not too bad. Scoot that right where the webbing is, and these two, scoot them back to where the webbing is. That's all I need to do. And it looks like I missed a little bit on this one because he's a little bit up on his toes. So just make sure that those are all just passing through the foot. They don't need to be exactly on it, but the closer they are, probably the better. Excellent. Okay, very nice. These need some actual definition to them. In R23, there's some extra controls we could use, but as a way of making this universal to everyone, this spline can be fed directly into a sweep. Hold down Alt. It'll automatically make it a parent of it. Feed in a secondary shape. Keep it simple with a, let's say, a end side. T for scale. Scale down the end side until we get some wrinkle type shapes. Then select the sweep and go to details. You could probably pull down end scale, but sometimes the spline might be backwards. Like when you drag this down, maybe some of these are backwards. So you can always go down to details, scale, and then pull down one side or the other. And there we can see that you can modify them down. And by doing this handle, you could like change where the thickness of these lie and, you know, just change the arcs of those a bit. In fact, it might be nice if it was like it starts out pretty fat and then kind of quickly ramps down. We'll just find the right place for that to happen. Now that should be happening at ground level. So half of it will be sinking below the ground, which is fine. We'll be ignoring that part. And excellent. So now we've got those wrinkles. Let's take a look at those in context. Once again, these are things that we might be swapping out. So I am again inclined to make a duplicate of this connect object. None of these need to be welding, actually. I will select every connect object we've made and say don't weld. We don't need that. It's just extra calculation time. This will be, can they all be wrinkles? Maybe they all can be in the same object. So this will just be wrinkles. Feed in the sweep. And these can be, I'll just call them fade. Those are fading wrinkles. In the volume builder, this needs to be fed the wrinkles. So make sure I select the volume builder, grab the wrinkles, drag them in. That's going to inflate them. I might want this to be a completely separate thing, so I'll just drag it in on top, and we should hide them. So we're just seeing the end result, and there we can see the wrinkles coming in. They're very small, and we need to compensate for that. So select the fade, T for scale, and let's just start scaling this up. And as we increase the size of the end side, we can see it begin to exist on the overall model. Now, something that might be obliterating those a bit is this smoothing deformer. If I were to turn that off, you see how they're going to sharpen their way back in again. Something to keep in mind. But those can get scaled out. Honestly, the way we're arcing them down, we probably just went so thin on them. We're getting a little too artistic. This probably, we don't want to arc them down so quick because then they just kind of disappear. So pulling that back up again, now they start to exist. And in fact, if we let them go out pretty far, That probably means we don't need the end side to be quite as large because I don't want them to be so big on the base. There we go. That looks better. NA, and you can just see them like this, and they start looking a lot better there. They don't have to be round. We're using an end side. Keep in mind, instead, you could use like a triangle shape. You could use a box shape so they could be taller than they are wide. The point being is we've got some nice little wrinkles in here. They're live, so we could say, okay, these are working well, but they're fading out really quickly. So how about, I don't know where they are, so let's go to a top view. Select that and say, all right, how about that one comes way out here? And we'll just select one more. I'm going to try and guess where it is. I missed. Rectangle selection will probably help. There we go. Got it. That can get pulled out. T for scale. And scale that up. And as it scales, then it should just be changing the arc, hiding the wrinkle again. Now we can just see the end result of them, and you see those will go further. Excellent. This is going to be a longer tutorial. I just accept that. It's just really fun. We're getting a really good result. So, hey, I'm going to be a little bit extra indulgent in this one. Hitting save. Let's make the next set of wrinkles that we need. I don't need this big mess. So how about no plastic builder? This is one I'm turning on and off very often. So this is another one that might be a nice idea to say, hey, custom color, bright yellow. So now I should, icon display color, custom color. Why is it not, maybe it only updates if it's turned on? That's weird. Why is the icon not changing? Huh. Okay, well, that's weird. Well, I was trying to make it so that it was easier to highlight, but it's not working there. I don't know if that's a bug or if I did something wrong. In any case, more wrinkles. Selecting the spline. I want some wrinkles that travel up the side of the model that we're feeding it. Keep in mind, each model you feed in, you'd have to do these each separately. But if we were just focused on, say, this model, I would like to see the original ones, just so I know where to put them. So here's one for this leg. And here's how we change this a little bit. I make a point and then a second point very quickly, and then another wrinkle that can do whatever I want it to. So there. And I want some in the webbing. I'm not, okay, I can actually see the webbing right there. You see this arc? So let's do point, point, and then pull this out a bit. Point, point, and make a nice long one. Escape. We'll do one here. Point, point, pull out, and then we'll give it a neighbor one. Point, point, kind of a short one. Escape, and why not? I'll put one on the front leg, so point, point, and it can go a little longer. And finally, we'll do one on the webbing here. Why not? Point, very close point, and a little bit of an arc. So why are we doing 2 points in approximately the same spot? And if you were inclined, I'm not going to, well, we'll do, nah, we won't. You could do them on the other side, obviously. It would be a good idea to do that. So the reason we added extra points on there is, and let's even make this easy on ourselves. From the top view, I want to select that inner point of each one of them. So there's the inner point, and inner point. Did I miss one? No. So those are all those inner points where we kind of doubled them up. If I grab all of those and start pulling them up, then these should now be flying in the air. And that is now a point that these can transition from being flat on the ground and up into the air. Pull this into the body. This one needs to continue hanging out near the base where this wrinkle is. So that's going to be nice. It's going to be a little bit extra fat on the end there. This one is actually doing a really nice job of shooting up extra far. I'm just going to guess. I think one probably exists right about there. Yeah, I think I got 2 of them, but that doesn't need to go as high. And let's try and grab just this one. And this one can go extra high, like all the way up into the dinosaur. So you can see how I'm moving those up into the air. Then duplicate the fade. And let's just call this up. So these will be the upward wrinkles. It doesn't need the original spline we fed in. Instead, it just needs the new one. Drag this down. It becomes part of the up wrinkle, and you can see it fading up. What this needs differently is in the sweep, it needs to fade in and fade out. So the first point travels down, and then we get a middle point. So now they fade up, and then they fade out. So you see that we have a wrinkle, travels to the model, and then shoots straight up, and I think that's working pretty well overall. Those two are a little bit close to each other. They're pretty fat overall. T for scale, scale them down. And I think in the up, I can drag this a little bit more to the right. Yeah, so now they're a little thicker in the base. Not too far. All right, there we go. And yeah, different ones are different lengths, so your mileage will vary. With this wrinkle is already being fed in, so visually hide it and turn on the overall mesh. And there we go. Check it out. We've got, oh, they're a little subtle right now. You see it's arcing upward. So T for scale, make them a little bit bigger. The bigger they are, the more they'll pop out. And now you see we've got, oops, hit undo. Now you see we've got some wrinkles adding some thickness and some arcs onto there, and you can be as specific and artistic as you want. And honestly, you can probably push them pretty far and they're going to continue to work. I don't know at what point they're going to look ugly, but they're continuing to look good, so that is excellent. The last one, this one's really quick. Let's turn off the builder again. And I again need to see the wrinkles. And this is the same idea, but we can just add extra ones anywhere we want. So let's say that there's an extra wrinkle right there, and maybe even curves around. And then you saw some happening on the edge. So here's one on that edge, maybe a smaller one hanging out near it, and sneak one in here. I think the plastic kind of going towards the corners might be somewhat of a natural phenomenon. So this type of thing are just like a third type of wrinkle that they don't travel up, they just travel along. Add them anywhere we think look cool. And let's do an experiment here and try and break the tangent. So click, drag, shift, break the tangent, and pull one out. I don't know if that will look good or not. I might have gone a little extreme, but hey, let's just find out. So there are some extra wrinkles we've introduced. These are going to be pretty much identical to the up one. So we'll just call these fade in out. So one just fades out, and this one will fade in and out. Don't need this spline. We need the new one we made. Feed that in on this different sweep, and now you see they're skinny, they get fat, they get skinny. So they fade in, fade out, and they're all on the ground. It's already in the wrinkles, so it should already get applied. Turn back on our volume builder, and now I've got extra wrinkles just laying on the ground. So artistically speaking, just go around, trace them, draw them anywhere you want on the overall setup, and there they will be. So this is good for us to just hit save again, because I'm very happy with the way that's gone. And the next step is to erase out the unwanted parts of this. And mainly that is, right now you can see that we've got this big ugly thing hanging out here. If it was sitting on a table, then that would just disappear. You wouldn't even see it. But even if you were like, well, we can ignore that, what you probably can't ignore is if we rewind all the way, we've already got the floor, we've already got these wrinkles, we've already got the dinosaur. They already exist all the time. We don't want those to exist until after this has melted down. Now, this is a little trickier. Well, it's a little more experimental. I'm less confident in it, but it did work, so we'll give it a try. I don't need to see the builder right now. And I'm just going to put a bunch of dashes at the end. I do want to be able to see it quickly. The wrinkles we can collapse, webbing collapse, model collapse. I'm just cleaning up a little bit. And this model collider, we might make changes, but we don't need to right now. And don't render. A lot of these things, it's a good idea to make sure that they don't render. So later on, when you go to do the final render, you don't want stuff suddenly being like, where'd that come from? So I want to see the plastic sheet. And that should not render, so that can always be turned off on the bottom stoplight. We need to create a big box below this thing that erases out everything that we don't want to see. What is the best way to do that? Well, here's my thought. We've got a plastic sheet, and I could outline the entire thing. I can show you by, where are they? Top and bottom. I'm going to turn those off for a split second. And we've got a sheet, and I want a rectangle that's perfectly outlining it, but also has the perfect subdivision. Easiest way to do that is to outline this. So I think there's let's hit U. I think there's a selection mode where we can outline. Outline selection, UQ. There we go. UQ is a shortcut. So if I just click, I've now outlined it. If you type in Shift-C, it'll pop open the commander, and we can type in the word edge. And here you see edge to spline. Double click that, and now it's created a spline that is the perfect outline. That also means it has the same subdivisions. So if I pull this entirely out of our hierarchy, a extrude could be created, if we feed in this spline, this extrude could push downward. So let's say negative. And how far down do we need to go? Well, we made this pretty tall, so this needs to go pretty negative. So about, let's just do a nice even 1,000. 1,000. And if I hit NB, you can see that it's subdivided the exact same way that the top was. Now, this box has a cap on the bottom and a cap on the top. The top is where the spline is. That's where it started. So under caps, I don't want a cap where we started. Turn that off. So now we have the original mesh and then the rest of a box to seal in a volume. Now, I don't know if it's a bug or it's just the way instances behave, but I essentially want to make an instance of this plastic sheet, a copy of it that shows all of the effects from it. But instance didn't work. But you know what did work? The good old connect object. When in doubt, use a connect. So creating a connect, it has a unique feature that we almost never use, which is we can drag in an object. So if I tell this connect that's actually the plastic sheet, then that should be creating a duplicate of the plastic sheet, and it's going to take on its own like positional information. So this also needs to live in the same place as the up and down, I do believe. So, and yeah, and then zero it out. So if I made the connect inside of here, it automatically would place it correctly. But now you can see that it is living in the correct spot as a connect, as a copy of this original one, which means we might be able to make it directly a child, but let's rename this plastic sheet instance, and then create another. If I hold down Control, create another connect, and I'll automatically make it a neighbor of it. This connect will be fed the plastic sheet instance and the extrude. And this time we actually do want that to be welding because it's going to weld the sides and the top into a single object, hiding the original sheet down below. Now we are just seeing this connect and the copy that's making. I can say don't copy the textures over, and now we see we got this nice box. This is now the erase box. It is already a child of the up and down, which means it will move up and down with it. And this is going to just erase everything out below. Let's intentionally put it in kind of at the wrong spot so we can see what we need to fix. Let's turn our plastic on, our final plastic. And there's our plastic sheet. So inside of the volume builder, the main plastic one, I would like to drag in the erase on the very top. And currently it's a union, so it's a giant volume. But instead, I'm going to say subtract. So now it's subtracting things away. Visually hiding it. I'm going to tell it not to render. And we can even hide it from the viewport. You can see that it is erased out our top sheet. That top plastic sheet that we want to keep is gone because it exists in the exact same place that it did. You can see if I turn it off, we get the bottom existing again, but also, where's the top? The top should be there. Oh, no, it should be there. Give me a moment. Okay, did a quick little check there, and it seems like, I don't know if I want to call this a bug, but it might be a bug where we are actually hiding the plastic sheet. And if we hide the plastic sheet, then the volume builder isn't seeing it. It's just turning it off. If I unhide that, then now you see, hey, it suddenly reappears. And if we make its parent, if I hide its parent, then it won't disappear, but we are hiding the original plastic. So everything we did was completely fine. It is now existing. So going to volume builder, you see that the erase isn't there at all. If I drag the erase in at the top, and currently it's a union, we get a giant block. Instead, I say subtract. You see that a bunch of the sheet has gotten erased, like the lip went away, and it's probably a little bit extra thin right now. So it is erasing out even where it began because it's so perfectly on top of the object. We can get around that by creating another very, very useful volume or a plane deformer. We've already got them, so let's just make a copy. Make it a child. I'm holding it on Control, so it makes a copy. Here's a copy of that. And just so we can see what we're doing, turn off the volume builder, and I would like to see the erase. This volume builder currently has a fall off. It's currently animated, so kill the keyframe off, 0 at the Z, under fall off, get rid of the fall off. This is now a plane deformer that wants to push everything about this in, and if I start increasing this, you can see we can inflate the entire thing in all directions, or we can go a little bit negative and deflate it a little bit. But in this case, I think we can get away with just pushing it straight down. Currently, the transform space is the node, and when it says node in this case, it's kind of referring to the points and polygons. It's taking on the normals of the points and polygons. Instead, I want the transform space to be based on the effector, and the effector is at 0, 0, 0 rotation. So if I were to grab Y and pull up and down, it's just moving everything up, it's moving everything down. We want everything to be kind of deformed downward and not move downward, because we kind of get this weird instance hierarchy going. So this is just a cleaner way of doing it. We know that sheet on top is 10 thick. So I think if we go minus 11, that should be enough to erase out everything but entirely leave the sheet that we have. And maybe at the very bottom, right when it connects to the dinosaur, maybe it will suddenly blob a little bit early, but we could always tweak that later. And if you got that kind of really close-up camera shot, then you might need to be more accurate. I don't think we're ever going to be that close or that accurate. So now, turning on the volume builder, we've got a giant thing that's erasing out everything below our final sheet right there. So if I unhide the original model, which actually we are going to want to be showing up at a certain point, but there's the original model. Give this a save because I think everything's working well. Hit NA. We did crank up the poly count on this, so this might not run super quickly, but let's hit play. And you know what? That's not terrible. Now, as this goes down, we see our original model, and then that starts pushing in. Now, based on this current angle, we can't see much, but look, it is pushing upward, and due to the smoothing and all that, it is erasing out everything about this dinosaur that is below that box. So if we go up to the top, we can now see it pushing up against the dinosaur, and as it melts downward, the original model is pushing everything away. So we are now essentially properly vacuum forming it by subtracting that out. Very, very pleased with this. This gives us the overall shape. A couple wrinkles emerge, which are really nice. We might spend a moment and add some extra wrinkles in because I think it's kind of a nice detail, but that goes down. We created these wrinkles. We could animate those on later, but I'm just going to leave them on as they are right now. I'm fine with them. This now hits, this is just kind of settling. You see it's still sagging down as we manually animated. It's sagging down, so the plastic keeps drifting. And now at frame 70, it's going to be like, no, and it starts pulling the plastic down very quickly. The plastic, the air is getting sucked out, and the air is gone. Everything's been pulled below, and because that entire thing that was erasing out is now living below, actually, this is still here. Okay, I got to figure that out because I didn't think that would be showing up. Oh, wait, no, that does make sense because that is by definition above the erasing. So we have to fix that separately. But we have now gotten a reveal of the dinosaur only when we wanted it to. So a couple extra steps we need to do. This is currently living below the ground. Pretty much anything that goes below 0, that can just automatically get erased. We have a base that we can really easily just copy this. I'm not sure where it should live. I'll just move it up here because this is where that kind of stuff is, but this will be erase ground. It is currently keyframed, so let's kill those keyframes. Don't worry. Hold down Control Shift, kill those keyframes, enable it. It's always turned on. If this is set to minus 60, so another 5 units, because there's already 5 down. Actually, we can eyeball this if you don't want to be too specific. And I do this a lot, and I'm just testing things. I'm gonna make this bigger. It needs to be big enough to capture this box, or the extra plastic. So I'll make that a little bit bigger. I don't think you want to be too much bigger than you have to be because it might be having to calculate volume, but I'm not sure. And let's make it taller, but not crazy tall. Let's do 300. And then from a side view, I'm just going to eyeball this. If I move this down just to make sure I am below the main sheet of plastic, that should be fine. And this is now erase ground. That could be hidden. And in the same place inside of the plastic volume builder, that is erasing. And now we have erase 2 or erase ground. So we'll also say, hey, erase ground. That is another subtract. So now all of that disappears from below the ground, and now we are just left with this sheet of plastic. We could probably even scoot it up a little bit. You see a little bit of a hint of those. So just for fun, grab the ground erase, and let's move it up a couple of units. A little bit of a wrinkle there. Another 2 units. There we go. I moved up enough where those wrinkles are getting completely chopped off, and we just have this sheet of plastic. So now everything should be getting erased out properly. Except for artistically, there's only one more step to do. So a quick save right there. And we've been timing all of this out as we go. So at what point do we want the dinosaur to disappear? This is dependent on your camera angle, potentially, where let's, and while you're testing, turn off volume builder and then unhide up down. So essentially the 2 things that we've highlighted. So up down and this are the 2 things we'll be alternating between, because this could be rewound and in erase is hidden. Plastic sheet is not hidden, so I'm not sure why it's sort of disappearing there. Yeah, not sure about that. It's only showing up when I pause, and it's all wrinkly. This, again, seems to have something to do with this volume builder is like consuming it, which is odd. I'm not sure what to make of that. It is turned off, but it's still looking like it's being consumed by it. But, well, we'll just work around that for now. Letting that run down, we can see it. You know, this is all calculating quickly. We don't have to wait for it to, like, refresh because of the very complicated volume builder. As this is pulling down, at what point does it block your camera? Man, it is really bugging me that when it showed up. You know what? I'm going to do another test. I'm going to save and then figure out why that's happening, and then I'll report in. Okay, I actually found that really quickly. It turns out that that is not the plastic sheet causing that problem. That is actually this connect object is kind of consuming it. It still lives there, and we can still feed it in, but we would also have to temporarily turn off this plastic sheet to make it reappear. A little bit of a pain, but it's back, and the point being is we can hit play and really quickly in real time. Well, you see it's about, for me, half frames, about 15 frames a second. But we can now run this in near real time and see the actual results quickly. So my whole point is we need this plastic dinosaur, or whatever the base model being fed in is. We need that to disappear at a particular point because we don't want it poking through. So if this goes down, you could just choose a time when it's fine. So in this case, I think we actually have a lot of leeway where, let's just say we had a low camera angle and it's like showing this a really long way. It's not poking through, I don't think, anywhere. And maybe if we turn on the plastic sheet, will it be poking through? No, it's not. So once it gets to the ground, which for us is frame 45, that's when we can disappear. So there's literally never a special time to like find it and turn it on or off. I'll turn back on the rings that are holding the plastic sheet, and we just need to turn that dinosaur off at that time. So that is the model. So at 45, it could actually disappear 1 frame earlier. This is when it should disappear. So go 1 frame back, basic. Yes, it is enabled. 1 frame forward. No, we don't want to enable. We want to probably keyframe its visibility. So it's going to continue to exist. So at the previous frame, it should be visible in editor and renderer keyframe. Next frame, it should be off, and then it gets keyframed. So just those 2 keyframes, the dinosaur instantly disappears in this frame. And now the illusion should be complete. The dinosaur magically disappears once a mold goes around it, but after it's kind of taken on its shape, everything is getting referenced. So rewinding, hitting play, that can now go down, and we won't have a dinosaur poking through if everything is working properly. You could always make it disappear earlier if you need to. You could use a bool, and the bool could go and erase it as it comes passing through. There's a lot of additional things you could do if you had to, but I think that works pretty well by itself. A few additional details. We're here. This is it. We've done the technique. Everything after this point is just stylistic. One of the important ones being the form of the shape. I think it's really nice if it kind of gets a little more resolution after it starts fading in. So this is going to melt and then suddenly gets pulled down, and up until this bit of the shape goes all the way up below ground, it's kind of like everything's getting extra suction on it. So right at the time that passes below the ground, which is maybe around frame 80, so this starts at frame 70 and then ends on frame 80. You can't backtrack. It's always a good idea to rewind it forward just to get the refresh. So we want to stop this pretty much right on frame 70 if I can. Boop. And then frame. So right around now would be the beginning of the time to inflate or deflate it a little bit extra. So in this case, we've got our final plastic. Let's turn that on. And now that we're back in the plastic, we do not need to be seeing the up and down, so that can be turned off. And turn back on the plastic sheet instance, just something we need to do. So we can now see that this is all very smooth. Everything's getting smoothed out. It's getting smoothed out in two primary ways. One is this smoothing deformer, and the other is all of the inflating that we're doing in the internal structure. We've got inflating the model, and then there's wrinkles, and those are not getting inflated, so that's why we have to keep on scaling them. And then there's also the inflating of the plastic sheet. That's why we separated these out. The plastic sheet, we don't want to change that. That sheet doesn't change thickness. But the model, that one can change a little bit. So starting at the time of 70, if we're inclined, select this inflate model, and we can keyframe the offset. At the same time, select your smoothing deformer, keyframe the strength on. And we saw that, well, if we hit play, that can continue to go forward. And at what time should those sort of settle in? And as this goes down, it's kind of like all the air has been sucked out at that point. You could go a couple extra frames. Let's go up to, yeah, we're up to 85. Whoop, I thought I hit stop. I guess I didn't. So it might pop a little bit, but yeah, go to 85. So now that we're 85, start pulling back on this smoothing. And you can see that it's going to start adding in a sharpness into your model. You can see that the polygons start getting revealed. This would look even better if you had a model that had like some extra fine details. Keep in mind the details can't be any finer than the volume size. So you're limited to that. But we could keyframe this smoothing as far down as we want to and limit it to wherever we want. So this could become really sharp, which is a nice additional detail. And yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And let's even go to 0. I will do that down to 0, but we're going to add to it as well. And then on our inflate model, we were at 4. How far down can we go? Keep in mind that you might start messing up different parts of your model if you go too low, but let's go down to 1. And it seems okay. And that all sharpened up pretty well. I'm a little worried about, you see how some of them, you see how like there's a connection right there, and this is going to be model dependent. There's like a connection right there. So if this goes down to 1, yes, it sharpens up, but those stop being connected. And just based on our resolution, you're going to get these little sharper angles. And if your smoothing isn't there, then those go away. The other thing to notice is this wrinkle needs to get pulled closer, or at least the webbing needs more thickness. So maybe we can fix it that way. I'm going to keyframe this at frame 85. Let's remember 70 to 85 is our transition here. Inside the builder, there is the webbing. And I could say, actually, I just want the webbing to live down here next to the inflate. So those get inflated like the floor does. So there's always a minimum thickness on that. And now it's not dependent on the inflating of the model. Instead, it's just the sheet inflate. And that will not get messed up. And now we get this nice overall shape on the model. That's working quite well. We're still on frame 85. We don't need the strength of the smoothing to go down to 0%. We could leave it at 10%. And you see it's going to smooth everything a little bit. That makes it a little more glossy. You can see as I drag the smoothing, very smooth, very shiny. And as I sharpen it up, you're going to get these harsher angles, these harsher reflections. So it's just a decision. Like, how sharp do you want the model to go, having inflated, smoothed it down? So I do think a little bit of smoothing goes a long way just to take out those extra edges. So 10% sounds good to me. Now, we could do it all in one smoothing, but you know what? Let's make a second unrelated smoothing, because if we look back on our reference, and always a really good idea to look on reference, we get a very big transition, especially on the floor here, right where the ground meets the object. Look at this very smooth curve we get. I would kind of like to get a little bit of that back in again. So holding down Control, I'll create a new smoothing. So it's created right here. And I'll just call this smoothing floor, because I would like it to have no stiffness, and we can smooth it as much as we want. You see that's a lot of smoothing, and I probably don't want that much. Let's do 11. So yeah, a lot of smoothing on the, everywhere. However, it can be fed a fall off. So this gets a linear fall off. And I always mix up y plus and y minus. Let's try that one. Sharp, yeah, it's backwards. So y minus. So now you can see that the bottom is getting very smoothed out and the top is not getting smoothed out at all. So I can place this wherever I want to, and you can see as I pull it down that the edge, just look at this bottom ridge, like very sharp, pull it up, and it's going to soften up and become smooth. So that's all we're doing is this effect of the ground being a little bit extra smooth. Keep in mind it's also affecting the wrinkles. Maybe that's a good thing for you, maybe not. You could add additional fall offs so it's only happening near your model. And if you were so inclined, you could go to a side view and just make sure that you slide this right where you want it to be, and it can have any kind of fall off that you want it to, depending on the length you set in the linear field. So that sharpens that up. Actually, that's working great. I like the look of that. So I guess we just hit another save, and I'm pretty sure if I rewind to, let's say 60, it's going to mess everything up. It's going to look, yeah, it's not going to look great. So we have to just run it through. In order to save ourselves time, I'll turn off the volume builder. It's helping a lot that I put those lines in there just so it pops out at me. Hit play, let this run until we get to the time I care about, which is going to be right around here. And now I can turn it on again. And hit play. And now obviously it's going to play very slowly. But it's slowly dragging down. And then there's a moment right now. Flip on the switch. All the suction starts pulling everything in. The model starts getting revealed where the plastic melts away. And it's also sharpening itself up as it goes as well. So that all stops sharpening on frame 85. And now this is our final. That's the final model. If you want extra contrast in there, keep in mind we could jump back to 70. It might look a little bit weird, but let's just pay attention to this model here. We could counter inflate it a little bit extra. So here is the inflate model. Like we're saying, okay, it's 4, which is nice and smooth and it's inflated. We could go further. That could go up to 6, let's say. And you see it gets a little bit fatter, a little bit more inflated. Jump it up to 7. And it's just a little bit extra. So now as the air gets pulled out, that can be affected. There can be more contrast as it's pulled down. Ignore the bottom part. I didn't rewind all the way. But as this gets, just pay attention to the spikes on him. You see as the air gets sucked out, it's going to make this part of the model look sharper and sharper and sharper as the air is getting sucked out around it. I'm not going to do it, but also keep in mind that right now we are just literally keyframing these to get less power. These SDF effects, this inflate, also has a field. So in theory, we could also have a linear field or something going from the top. So it could actually have the top could deflate while the bottom is still a little more bubbly. I have found that fall offs inside of these effects can really slow things down. I think it's because every single voxel has to sample that fall off. It can take a while, but keep in mind that is an additional thing that can be done. It looks like this is escaping at the bottom a little bit. We were being conservative with our base, or not the base. This is the erase ground. It looks like I didn't go quite far enough. You can see that it's probably, let's make it visible. And you'll probably see that right where I ended the box, we need it to go down more. Super easy to fix. Turn it off, and let's not be subtle this time. We'll go way further. And oh yeah, it's supposed to be able to go, let me hit undo. It's right there, right in the middle, right below where these the frame is. So scale that up, scoot it down. Okay, I think that was pretty accurate. So unhide it, go back to 3D, turn back on our volume builder, and there, dinosaur's back, nothing below it. All right, I know that was a lot. There's a lot of details on there, but we now have formed this mold. We added in all these wrinkles, we added in the webbing, and we have a crazy model that you should never try and vacuum formed. Honestly, even taking a look at it now, it probably would have been nice, you know how we built this webbing here, it would have been nice to maybe put little C shapes in between the different parts of webbing. That would probably make it feel a little bit more like a vacuum form as well. Tweaking the model, cleaning it up a little bit. You see like the spike, it kind of wants to merge with that one because it kind of flares out a little bit. Here's the magic of what we've done, though. If we turn off the volume builder, everything runs quickly. I can rewind this all the way to the beginning. Here's the original dinosaur. It lives inside of this model connect object. So we could just go to this original model, and any changes we make will propagate through the entire thing. So turn off the connect. So now we can see the original geometry here. If this was the only bit of the model that is not cooperating with us, we can just say, hey, select those points, scoot them back a little bit. There we go. Now we fixed that. Maybe this little spike right there, maybe that isn't cooperating with us. There we go. Scoot that back. One more point behind it. Scoot that back. There, that's now fixed. And we could do that everywhere, just cleaning this up however we want to. And that all will pop out and just behave better. Like this little hole in there, maybe that'd be something to fix. Those little cavities can get weird, and that's why we fix the cavities below. All right, that has covered all of the details. There's extra things we can do, and if you want to continue watching, I'm going to attempt to swap this out for a different model and see how quickly certain things can update. Having said that, I'm not going to like redo perfect webbing or anything because we've already walked through that once. You see how it works. We've got the entire setup going. I think we were pretty good about naming and labeling everything. This entire thing could be put into a null as the rig, and it's ready to rock. And you could probably bake out as Alembic on the plastic, and then you'd have that file ready to go. The one thing I didn't talk about, I guess if you're interested, like I said, we'll be indulgent on this. The one thing I didn't do was add in a couple of extra wrinkles. So I'll do that. Let's turn the model on, and the plastic is currently off. That's fine. So inside the up and down, make it visible, turn off plastic sheet, and now we're in fast mode. Hit play. Let that go down. Something I think it might be kind of nice. I don't know if it's realistic, but we could add some extra wrinkles in at this step, which I did in my test run. It was kind of fun, so we'll do that here. Here is the thought. Creating a rectangle, and the rectangle needs to lay flat on the ground. View it from the top, so there is a rectangle. That goes inside of a cloner. Cloner set to radial mode. I want there to be 4. Increase the radius. Select the rectangle. Let's pinch it, make it a lot less wide. Be pretty small there. And perhaps a little taller. Change the radius. So you can see I've kind of got 4 rectangles just going in a spiral. Under offset. Let's offset it by 45 degrees. And now you see I've got these rectangles heading towards the corners. I want a little bigger, so T for scale is the quickest way to kind of scale that up. And now I can easily decrease the width a little bit. So now I've got these super skinny rectangles as a spline going to sort of a center point here, right where the dinosaur peaks. So I don't know if I have to, but I will put this into a connect object. Name this, let's just say wrinkles. So those are wrinkles. I would like to deform our original plastic sheet. So this actually comes before the collision. So this might mess up for a second, but create a copy of the plane deformer. This one is a plane deformer. I'll call it plane deformer wrinkles. It does not have this box field fall off. So now you can see it's pushing everything down. It does not have these keyframes. Just get rid of those. And instead, let's push them up. I'm going to say 50, which is a lot, but you see everything's getting pushed up now by 50. So, okay, we just copied that deformer over. This needs a fall off. That fall off will be from the wrinkles. Drag this in. I want it to come in as a spline object. Very important. That should have a spline shape. It's currently set to curve. I want it to be a mask. A mask along Y. So it's looking up and down. Now you can see that that spline is being translated onto our overall shape here. And it is creating essentially some wrinkles shooting out towards the edge. Meaning, if we have this distance, I can increase this or decrease it. And you can see it's going to widen it or make it thinner. And there we go. Now we've got this wrinkle shape going. It's a little extreme right now. So say, don't push out quite as far. Pull this down to whatever level gives you this nice wrinkle right there. And it's going to be there and applying all the time. So we need to limit this effect. And it's just this plain deformer wrinkles. So under fall off, we've got the wrinkles. Let's make a spherical fall off. Nice big one, T for scale. Oop. Select the spherical field, T for scale. Scale up and up and up and up. Big enough so that it is going to encompass everywhere you want the wrinkle to be. E for move. Scoot this down to about the ground plate. And if we say, hey, take that spherical field and multiply it on the wrinkle, you can see it's now falling off, and it can only exist inside of this sphere. Selecting the spherical field under its coordinates, I can scale it down on Y and really pinch it down. And now these wrinkles cannot even begin until it hits the top of the dinosaur. So pulling this down, that is where the wrinkles begin. And if we wanted to, this entire thing could be moved above that smoothing deformer, but that would probably obliterate the wrinkles. So we can just leave it like that. I don't even know if we have to change anything else. I don't want this to move up and down. So this spherical field is placed where I want it to be. So it does need to be pulled out. I will copy the name and rename this plane deformer wrinkles just so I know that's what's associated with. Pull it entirely out of the hierarchy, like entirely out, so it's just not a child, but now it won't move. And all that means is as our sheet of plastic moves down, it'll pass into that spherical fall off, meaning these wrinkles will begin to appear. So let's hit play, and as this pulls down, those wrinkles begin to appear, and they exist for a little bit. They get pulled down, and it's just a little extra wrinkle that we threw in there. Because it's a rig, and we can control that however we want. Going to the cloner, we could randomize these. We could randomize the scale. We could make them fatter. We could make them not quite as long. We could also increase. Let's make 8 of them. So now there's 8. It's overshooting those. That might escape the edge. But now if I do this, you can now see, look, wrinkle, wrinkle, wrinkle. So now we've got 8 of them. So that was a super nice, simple, easy rig to add on top of it. And those are now adding wrinkles in. And I actually kind of like this extra bit. And I mean, we could put an odd number. Let's make it 9. So they're just kind of randomly around. But I don't want them to, I don't want it making it escape this plastic, well, this edge that's supposed to keep the plastic trapped. So we've already got these really tall box deformers. So inside of our deformer wrinkles, drag in, I don't know if we want the box field smoothing. That is just literally the edge. Or we could grab the plane field, and that's going to be fading it out. Let's try using the plane one and drag that in, say multiply. And I'm going to turn it on and off so you can see that it is making it fade out to the edge, but it's kind of obliterating the wrinkle overall. It's sort of there, but sort of not. So I didn't like that one. So let's try our box field smoothing and make that multiply. There we go. So those now go to the edge, but they can't go all the way to the edge because that box field stops them from doing it. And yeah, I actually like the way that looks. And all this stuff is live. Everything here is, we only made one thing editable this whole time. It was a sheet of plastic so we can make the vertex tag. And so, yeah, pretty straightforward to be able to do that. I know there's a lot of different steps here, and it was more about like the overall techniques. There's a really cool ways of trying to make this as clean as we can, thinking about volumes in a slightly different way, and I think some pretty neat ways of combining the things to end up with this final end result that's really robust. But and along those lines, you can change anything you want. So these wrinkles, we can push it further, and look, we can really, like, we can push these wrinkles super far, and they look pretty cool. Like, I like those wrinkles, and they should still fade away, and we're still running in our fast version of the rig. So hit play, look at those wrinkles get revealed, and then they still fade out, and then they get pulled down, and they just will disappear. I like that. I was just kind of goofing around, but I'm going to keep that. I think that was a cool addition. We've messed it up a little bit more, which is cool. So that now covers all, that is literally every cool base detail I wanted to cover. So that wraps this up, except that I'm going to swap out the model so you can see how quickly we should be able to swap out a model because of the way we decided to build this. Let's save that as another version. FG. And let's just grab another one of the models from the volume 2 sculpting base, and let's steal the, let's do the elephant. I like the elephant. So the elephant's already a pretty good scale right there. Actually, I don't even think, I'm not even going to change the scale. It's a good default scale. That elephant can be dropped into model base. The Stegosaurus, I'll just delete it. I'll steal his material, and then I'll delete the Stegosaurus. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time adding the webbing in. But you would, if you want to customize and get really nice clean webbing, you'd have to do all of that. So let's take a look at what we have, and that's the hump on it. So model extra in this one, I don't need any model extra. I won't delete model extra. I'll just delete the contents of model extra. And then we've got webbing. Let's see what the webbing is doing. And I mean, it would not take long to modify this and move it into the proper spot. I'm not going to do it. So once again, the webbing, I could just turn that off, and now that won't be generating any geometry. Then there's wrinkles. turn that on, and we've got different wrinkles that will be covering different spots. This case, we got fade in, fade out. Those are fine. But the up ones, these are probably the roughest ones. But if we are inclined, we could go to the top view and just start selecting. Like I can select that one, hit UW, and just move this to the foot. I can see the elephant's foot right there. Select this one. I don't want that one. UW, delete. Select this one, UW, select all, or select connected is UW, and put that there. Select this one, UW, put it right there. Here's another one, UW, and let's see if I can sneak it back here. R for rotate, and there, that's another one on the back of the elephant. So those are now fixed. And then we've got, those are the ones that traveled up. I guess there's a couple others. Yeah, this one. Oops. Yeah, these aren't going anywhere because we don't have the webbing. So UW, delete. And then the fade, these are fading out from the creature as well. So I could select that one, move it to the foot, select one point, UW, move it, connect to the foot, select that one, UW, move it to the foot. It's going to be really wrinkly for the foot. UW, move it to the foot, and UW, foot. And you can see, I mean, you know, you'd spend as much time on this as you want to, as accurate as you'd want to make it. Select these two, UW, move it to the foot. And these two were the webbing, so UW, delete. Select these two, UW, move to the foot. Now, there might be some overlap and some wrinkles, but now you can see I have now relatively quickly moved all those wrinkles here. There will be the hole in the elephant. That is not something we cleaned up. But now I've just swapped out those models and deleted some of these things. So not doing anything else, I think not doing literally anything else. Let's see what our end result is. So we are currently in, are we in fast mode? Yeah, we're currently in fast mode because the plastic sheet is off. So let's just hit play. Oh, and we can hide all those. Hide, hit play. And that's looking kind of elephant shaped to me. That's there. It gets pulled down. Zoop. It's just that little magic trick. It disappears. So let's go and find that perfect frame. And the wobble's bugging me a little bit. I'm not sure where the wobble's coming from. But let's go a frame forward like that. And turn on our volume builder. And there we go. Look, the elephant gets revealed up on the top. Everything's getting pulled down. And we are now vacuum forming the elephant with just essentially a swap of the model. And then you'd have to modify your details. So all these extra details, that's important. But there's the elephant getting revealed. And just because it started vibrating, I'm going to take a moment and do a quick bit of R&D and make sure that I can figure out what that was and let you know. GH. I guess it's important to note that if you are supporting a Patreon, you get access to these scene files if you're more of the type of person who likes to reverse engineer things. Okay, I did a little research, and I gotta say, I'm not entirely certain what's happening. We can turn off the plastic and run it, and we can see it run, and sometimes it does it, and sometimes it doesn't. See right there, there's a pop, but then not really any jitter, and if I rewind and let it run again, we could end up with very different results. Like there's one pop, but it seems a little stop motion-y. Try one more time because it's hard to replicate things not quite working. There's another pop, and yeah, a little stop motion-y again. Having said that, it seems to be some combination of the collision seeing the wrinkles. So if I turn this off, it entirely doesn't happen. It just goes away. But I mean, I really like those wrinkles, so I don't want those to go away. But you see that calms it down. I'm not sure what causes that. In addition, it seemed like if I, inside the collision, cleared out this tag, it did seem to improve things, but it's hard to get data on this type of thing. So I am curious exactly what might be happening. The pop still happened. But like it only happens sometimes. It even goes to like, if I, let's put the map back, hit undo. If I turn off the wrinkles, turn them back on again, and I hit play, there's a good chance it's going to run really smoothly. It's like even just turning on and off, it seems to be having an effect on it, and it's not consistent. It has something to do with the collision deformer. Having said that, like I wish I had a perfect answer. I don't. If anybody figures out exactly, like mechanically, why that would be happening, I'd love to know an answer. Having said that, Keep in mind that the collision deformer does have a cache. So if you run through and you get one really good cache, then hey, it's baked, it's ready to go, and you can always clear it out later. And that once you cache it, you'll be able to scrub forward and backward, which is really, really useful as well. That wraps up another epically long tutorial from Rocket Lasso. A lot of fun techniques. I really like this effect. I like that I've gotten this question again and again and again, and finally we have a version that I really like. I mentioned that if you're supporting on Patreon that you can get access to the scene files if you're a person who likes to reverse engineer things. That is very useful. I know I like doing that type of thing. And in addition to that, there's the new rocketlasso.com. You can search the tutorials. I've got everything tagged inside each tutorial post. There's the time codes for each part, so it's really easy to jump around to different parts or repeat things, run things at slower speed because I can talk very fast sometimes. I know that. Thank you so much for watching. If this ended up being useful for you, if you like this type of content, if you enjoy the live streams and the tutorials, I do have a Patreon set up so you can get the scene files, but there's also bonus live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays where we try and figure out the techniques for these tutorials and just dive deep and sometimes just explore things that I'm curious about. Anyway, that's going to wrap this up. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next live stream or next tutorial. Bye-bye, everybody.